Now we're on for a very special session and one of my favorite race, Sebring. Good morning, John. Welcome back. Oh, I think you're on mute. So, okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So, Marshall, it's on to you.
What should we talk about? 12 Hours of Sebring. Looking forward to how ragged it's going to be. That's one of the things that I love most about this race every year. Of all the IMSA events we go to, many of them are excellent. Not all of them feature vehicular devastation and physical exhaustion. And this is something that Sebring brings more than I would say almost any other race. Maybe the visit to Detroit, the streets of Detroit, is where we see a lot of cars banged up, a lot of people not just hitting walls, but hitting each other, running deep into brake zones. There's some mayhem there, but Sebring packing that into 12 hours, honestly, if you like drama, if you don't like knowing who's probably going to win before the race starts, that is Sebring each year. All right, let's think about non-traditional Sebring topics. So I believe it was the start of the race in 2009. I happened to not be in turn one, as most photographers do. Head down to turn one, get that long shot of the cars coming at you, and getting ready for that. You get the field that fans out, you get that nice photograph you tend to see. I said, I'm going to do something different this year. I'm going to go around the back of the circuit to turn 16 before they head on to the long Ullman straight down the back straight and get a shot there. Why? I don't know. It ended up being a very bad choice. The photo stuff that I brought back wasn't great. But what I do remember, and the reason I'm mentioning this, is while I was in Sebring in the middle of March, doing reporting, being a photographer, doing some videos and whatnot, deciding to go a little rogue and break from what everyone else does and go out to turn 16 and get some start shots there. Don't ever do that. Got a phone call after the field had gone by, I think first or second time. John Dunan's on the phone. Look at that.
He's I am. Can you hear me?
Phone.
Can you see
me? Are you
me?
really talking to us through like an old handheld telephone?
Yeah, I actually had to do the old dial. We're about to do the new phone system here at Sebring, so we're just moving to the push button from the dial.
At least you're not outside at a payphone, so that's certainly good. Well, let me finish my quick little story there while we're waiting for you. So while I'm out in turn 16, I get a call, and it's from my good friend Gary Sheehan, who'd driven for me many times. We were doing a first where I wasn't at the racetrack where my own car was competing. Gary was running it at I think an SCCA event at Sears Point, Sonoma Raceway. And he was calling to tell me that he'd put the car on pole. So this is a Saturday. Sebring starts on Saturdays. He'd put the car on pole, so that's great. But going into the S's, roughly the highest speed portion of the track, someone and something had blown their engine 5 seconds before he arrived, left all the oil there. So at 120 or 30 miles an hour, he hit one barrier, ricocheted to another, and then actually kind of climbed up the hill, and the car was almost completely totaled. So that's the most fun phone call I've ever gotten while at Sebring, shooting start shots from turn 16 for no reason whatsoever. Don't ever do that again. But getting a call, being at a motor race, trying to do my job, and having my driver call and say, congratulations, we're on pole, and your car's almost completely destroyed. I don't remember much after that took place, but that was the most fun phone call I got, John. But it certainly wasn't from a handheld phone like you have. All right, now that we got you, now that we get to speak with the man who is the president of IMSA, who comes to that role having been a program manager for many, many years, looking after Mazda Motorsports. Let's just start there, John. I know we have Sebring here. I know that Mazda, obviously, success at Sebring, finally, biggest win of its IMSA heritage. What was it like coming out of the end of year Sebring 12 hours that we had last year, you being president, trying to be impartial, but also, I'm guessing, doing some little private happy dances that the program you brought to life achieved its biggest success there?
Well, it was a quiet moment out behind Victory Lane, perhaps by myself, to make sure that I had that celebration, a moment of reward, so to speak, that I wanted so badly to see Mazda achieve. And finally, they were able to put all the pieces together last fall. And a lot of folks from Japan sent text messages immediately after the race, which was really rewarding and fulfilling. Made so many good friends there, but was really happy for the brand, really happy for all the drivers that had been so much a part of the program development and even some of our ladder programs. And then, of course, my good buddies at Multimatic, who really helped transform that program. And to see it all come together was amazing. And I, for years, wanted the Mazda name up on the front straightaway at Sebring. And Saturday, as part of pre-race ceremonies, that's going to happen. We got a new little tradition of banner raising for all the manufacturers that have won this race over the last 68 times.
Nice. So that's adding tradition to Sebring. That doesn't happen that often. So is that you on a really, really tall ladder, having someone else crooked? How are we doing this?
I think we got a little Velcro. I think we got a little black sheet. But I just really excited for all the names you see up there. I mean, Porsche, Audi, ultimately Nissan, Toyota got the job done. But even back to that first little Fraser Nash that won the very first race, you see, Bentley, all the names up there. It's such a key part of endurance racing history. So I think adding that little tradition at the beginning allows us to celebrate all the achievements here at such a historic place.
Looks like you got some reams of copier paper behind you and all kinds of, man, you got office supplies. We're going to have to check the inventory before we're done here. So as I normally do, love getting racing fans involved, whether it's IMSA or whatever else. Hey, let's connect you with whether it's a driver or team owner, in this case, the president of IMSA. So I put out a call because I know you're tired of answering my stupid questions over the last 15 years. Said, hey, IMSA fans, you got the man who's in charge. Let's hear what you got to say. So why don't we do that? Why don't we jump into some fan Q&A, on which I know when I asked you if you wanted to do this last night, you were like, absolutely, as long as it's not from you. So we're going to go with our pal John Ojnar, who says, John, great name, first name, by the way. So yeah, from one John to another, he's rather happy. He says, when do we expect to see the back and forth between the ACO and the WEC and IMSA in terms of the upcoming LMDH and the brand new hypercars that are debuting there in the ACO and WEC this year? Curious when we might see those cars playing back and forth. We know that the LMDH cars, when they arrive in 23, are allowed to go race at Le Mans and WEC right away. Maybe more of a question about when do you think their hypercars might be allowed in IMSA? And is also curious about how the conversations between the organizations are going in terms of balancing the vehicles.
Well, first of all, great name to John as well.
Yeah,
and happy St. Patrick's Day. Hopefully he's a fellow Irishman.
Yeah.
But we and all of our colleagues and partners at the ACO are very excited about the convergence we announced last January. The big question is, will Hypercar and LMDH race together? The ACO announced back in September that they make plans to do so right away in the top category. We're certainly open to that concept because Hypercar was written to a completely different set of regulations in ACO's partnership with the FIA. And LMDH was written in conjunction with IMSA and the ACO. There's some work to be done. We're open to it. We certainly want to see those cars run. We want to gather data. We want to get them into the wind tunnel here at Windshear. We want to get them to the Concord dyno and be able to get some really solid on-track data off the cars to make sure that the manufacturers that have announced that they're going to invest in LMDH are already working on it, and those that have announced the hypercar program are able to come to a level playing field. The technical working groups of chassis constructors, manufacturers, and the technical staffs at the ACO, led by Terry Bouvet, and then the IMSA side led by Simon Hodgson and Matt, are literally on daily calls, looking at things like how does a four-wheel drive platform compete with a two-wheel drive platform in changing weather conditions? How does a single source hybrid, which we announced from LMDH, go in unison with a proprietary hybrid system and the deployments associated with all those functions? So a lot of work to be done yet, but I think for our fans, there's no question that having a single set of prototypes competing head-to-head is the ultimate goal. And I know, Marshall, you and I have talked about this for many years, what both of us have grown up around back in the GTP days and World Sports Car Championship days.
Would you foresee, John, that being an immediate thing? I know in recent discussions, not last week or month, but later last year when we visited on this topic, asked, do you think we're going to see hypercars welcomed right away the moment LMDH's debut here in IMSA? At least the feeling then was, don't know if it's going to be an immediate thing. We might want to spend a year benchmarking, as you mentioned, before we actually let the two very different types of prototypes compete together for an overall win at Daytona or Sebring or otherwise. Has that viewpoint changed at all?
No, I think you're accurate, Marshall. I think we need to spend as much time as possible gauging the performance levels. You know, the one positive I see for sure, and fingers crossed that we can have our partners and friends of the WEC back here at Sebring for Super Sebring next March. What better way to see the cars perform than on a track that we certainly know at IMSA extremely well, gather data and understand how those platforms perform in comparison to what we have right now with LMDA, or rather DPI and or LMP2. So you can certainly get some benchmarks and then hopefully prepare for later in 23 or maybe in 24. But it's going to take some time yet, and the technical teams are working feverishly to try to make it all come together.
Come back to LMDH in a moment. Wanted to move to another big topic of the future for IMSA, maybe a bit of a two-parter. Announced that the beloved GT Le Mans class, one of the finest factory GT racing we've ever seen in North America. Car counts have been coming down a little bit. That class is going to be phased out at the end of 21. We're going to have a new class, GTD Pro, coming in, where the factories are meant to just migrate there. Daniel Summersgill asks, has there been any interest from manufacturers or teams that aren't currently in GTLM to consider moving to GTD Pro next year? Question of, you've announced it, what kind of uptake have you heard? And if you can give us all the secrets of who's called and said they're going to be entering GTD Pro, greatly appreciate it.
Well, unfortunately, in terms of announcements, the OEMs are the folks that have that news to share. I think leading up to what we announced in January, we did a lot of homework, and we have a saying in Daytona, the market will speak. And so in preparation for that announcement, we spent a lot of time communicating with the 9, and then if you include another 10 GTD and GTLM manufacturers, and got their feedback on heading this direction. And it was unanimous. It was the right thing from their perspectives to try to converge and converge around GT3 global specifications, which is what we announced. Now the devil's in the details. The devil's in the details when it comes to how our tire partner Michelin utilizes their technology to bring the tires that will cause those categories to be able to compete on a level playing field. There's the GT3 specs themselves, and making sure that we don't outsmart ourselves relative to performance levels. There's driver rankings between the two categories. But so far, since the announcement, been several manufacturer calls, several conversations with Michelin. We have a few meetings here at the track this weekend to try to hone in on what it's going to look like, because sooner rather than later, we're going to need to be out doing some testing and making sure that we've got the balance is correct. But so far, without a single doubt, all of the manufacturers are very excited about it. The beloved Corvettes, I pray and hope will continue to be a pillar of IMSA and GT racing, because that Corvette Nation that's parked out at turn 17 gathering already, I know would want to see that continue.
BMW has a beautiful new GT3 car coming for next year as well that would fit nicely, and there's plenty of scenarios I can think of where there should be quality uptake there. The second part to this question, John, is we know where we're going in 2022 with GTD Pro, coming up to a bit of a international timeline here for GT3, some possible revisions for that class in general. We know that across the pond, friends at the ACO and WEC sticking with their GTLM/GTE regulations for the near future. Tell me about IMSA going in the direction here, as you mentioned, that fits the market. The market has spoken and said, we're going to stay pro factory, but GT3 regulations now. Tell me about how you do this and how you either interact or consult with your friends in France who are going to stick with the current formula, maybe see how, just like prototypes, is there a way there could be some form of alignment on where the two organizations or three organizations head in the future?
I sure hope so. And relative to that being the end game, Pierre Fillon will be joining us this weekend. Frédéric Lequin, the new head of the WEC, will be with us. We have ongoing dialogue, and would be certainly, I think, our hope and the hope of all the fans around the world to see the best of the best gathering at Daytona, here at Sebring, at Le Mans, in the same platform. Very sensitive to the homologation periods that are already in place. So it really, again, depends on how the customers vote, especially in GTD AM, which has got a very solid field as the Le Mans entry list was already unveiled. So we want to be careful to not go too fast relative to the investment that people already have in equipment. The timing was right for us. Long before I arrived at IMSA, there had been discussions maybe for the last year or 18 months about this exact topic. We felt the timing was right. We made that announcement in full cooperation with the ACO. They knew it was coming, and I think hopefully we're the leaders of what can be a global convergence in GT as well in the coming short term.
Got about 10 minutes left, John, so I'll pick and choose one or two more questions. Let's see. IMSA fan here, Ryan Terpstra from Michigan, curious about the Detroit weekend, wondering that since Le Mans has been pushed back, normally the GT Le Mans class does not compete at the Detroit street race due to timing of it being right next to Le Mans. He's wondering, with Le Mans being pushed back to August, whether GTLM could be added in. And maybe on the general topic of calendar changes, I know there's been some speculation about Detroit, folks asking about, are we going to go to Canada? Any thoughts on that front, and how much is sorting out the calendar taking up your time?
Well, I know you spent a lot of time spying on me. I didn't realize your listeners did the same, but
you don't see
I had a call this morning with Michael Montry from the Penske group that manages the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle, the Chevrolet Grand Prix, and we're talking about all kinds of scenarios. The Le Mans date, as you pointed out, changing to August does open up some opportunity for us, but in this COVID environment, as you know, there's a bunch of dominoes. There's now a WEC race at Portimao on the Saturday of June 12th, which is the IndyCar weekend. There are other dates, an SRO America's date that is currently set for VIR. So there's a lot at play. There's drivers with commitments around the world, but I personally would love to see the Corvettes run at in the shadows of the Rensen there in Detroit. I know the Corvette Nation and everybody at GM would like that. So there's some real positive opportunities here. A lot at play relative to having fans on site, and there's so many different factors. So we're working through it. You mentioned Canada. Boy, do I miss Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Miles, Carlo, Ron Fellows, they've done an amazing job with that facility, and it was painful not to go there in 2020. I hope we can. There's some quarantine requirements going across the border that make it pretty difficult. So more news to come. We're pretty focused on getting the 69th running of Sebring in on Saturday and all the development series that are with us, and obviously Michelin Pilot Challenge. But next few weeks, you'll probably hear some news about those future dates.
Two more questions for you, John. One looking to the future and one about this weekend. LMDH, got a question here from Tigera 380. Curious about IMSA's involvement in courting new LMDH manufacturers. Do you play a passive role? Do you just wait for the manufacturers to come to you? Is IMSA helping to make board presentations if necessary? Curious about how that dynamic happens. And also wanted to add in a second part to that, which is right now we have 3 LMDH manufacturers confirmed: Audi, Acura, and Porsche. On my informal list of announcements I expect to come in the nearish future, I have as many as 7 total manufacturers. I would bet money 6 to 7 will be there for the start of this new formula in 2023. Can you tell us how IMSA plays a role in helping to bring manufacturers in? And also if you share my similar numeric optimism.
I sure do, Marshall. And the reason my smile's ear to ear is because I do believe that the future of our sport is very, very bright, both in, as we talked about, GT, but definitely in LMDH. It all started with a vision, and that's thanks to Mr. France. Jim had the vision on DPI, and so many people worked hard on that with Cadillac, Acura, Mazda, and originally Nissan buying in and investing in that strategy. And the idea of convergence and what we announced in January of 20 brought many more to the table. So kudos to Simon Hodgson, Matt Kurdock, Terry Bouvet, and all the partners, because at some point there's been 15 manufacturers at the table with interest, taking notes and studying the concept of LMDH. So while we're not actually going into board presentations, the fact that we put the platform out there, again, the market has been begging for it. That is what attracted them. Nobody's officially left the table, so to speak. So I think your predictions, 9 times out of 10, you're spot on anyway. But I think we hope for at least 50% of those 15 or so that have been at the table to show up and compete starting in 23, and maybe a few more after that in the following years.
Awesome. Last item for you. There's a motor race this weekend. It's 12 hours and it's all awesome. Let's talk about the thing that we had to a degree with the last Sebring that was run, shifted to the end of the year due to COVID. This year, not saying it's totally wide open, Green Park's going to be filled 1,000,000% and overflowing like it normally is. Tell us about going into a Sebring knowing that you can have fans there, that there can be some of that energy. I don't know if it's going to be the full accompaniment of 12 people in cow suits walking through the paddock, or people being baptized by Greek gods and whomever walking around. But tell me about the energy and anticipation for Sebring feeling more like the real Sebring.
Well, I can tell you, one of our concerns with having to push the event back to November last year was to turn right around and have another 12-hour of Sebring in March in its traditional time slot. But those worries have been thwarted because of the enthusiasm of the fan base. And unfortunately, we're going to have to maintain a closed paddock, which pains me for all of our fans who are on site. But it's the right thing to do in this short term. And hopefully as the season progresses and definitely into 2022, we can open that up. But we need to do the right thing. We're grateful that we're allowed to run the event. We're really pleased that all of our participants have bought into the protocol we have for in the paddock. And I can tell you by the line of motorhomes, so many people have found a way to come to an event, an IMSA event, the 12 Hours of Sebring, have a family outing, do it in an open environment with their camper, with their scaffolding, with their outdoor couches, and do it in a safe manner. And I had to run off site for a meeting earlier, and I spent some time in traffic because the motorhome line was significant. But there's going to be a really nice crowd. Hopefully an amazing audience on NBC on Saturday as well, tuning in at 10 a.m. Eastern. We got Lee Greenwood singing the national anthem and God Bless America. And a lot of the traditions, as you state, they'll be in full display, and hopefully we can get back to normal real soon.
All right. Be careful on that ladder, putting up the banner. All right. That's job number one. John, we get to not only say thank you to you, but we get to throw to some mutual friends. Bob Varsha, how often do you get to throw to the great Bob Varsha in life, and how amazing is it to read about the encouraging news on his side overcoming his health scares and such. But we get to throw to the great John Gorsline as well. Gorsline Scholarship, as you know, John and his Gorsline company insured teens, drivers for so many years, really been Santa Claus, patron saint, person looking after so many folks in our paddock. But he's also extended racing scholarships to folks. So not just supporting the paddock, also investing into the paddock. Pretty special thing here where we're getting to do this. So I get to throw to Bob Varsha of all things.
Incredible. Great to see Bob's name on the screen, and John's up in his suite above the front straightaway. So really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks to EPARTRADE and everybody at Racer, and everyone, please, if you can't be here on site, tune in on Saturday. I think it's going to be an amazing race.